Hi, I'm Ralph Amicis, one of the astrologers, along with Lonnie D. Amicis of the Planetary calendar, and this is your forecast for December of 2017. Now, when we do this forecast, we're working with three primary tools. We're working with the actual calendar that we created, or we did calculated and filled in, and let me just take a quick picture of that. Hopefully you have this. If you don't, then really, why not? And then we also work with the charts, primarily the lunations, the full moon and the new moons. This is the chart for the full moon for December. And we also work with the forecast that we've written. And within the forecast, as you go through, you're going to find letters periodically, single letters, A, B, C, D, E. This month, what does it go up to? I think it goes all the way up to K in December. And on the charts, on the calendars themselves, you will find that as well. Like, for instance, here is C, okay, for the 3rd on the full moon. And those days are days in which something significant is happening. And the way you use this is, first of all, read the entire forecast. At the beginning of the month, read the forecast, see what's coming up. You could read it way in advance if you want. And then as you're going through the calendar and you'll get to the 3rd and you say, oh, look, there's a C. Go back to the forecast again and say, what happened? What's the C talking about? And get to K. What's K talking about? To refresh your memory about what type of things are going on, what planet's changing sign, what aspect is going on. That's going to be out there in the news. That's going to affect your life somehow or other, so you're prepared for that, or you understand the dynamics at work and maybe how to position yourself within that. Now, if you're reading the forecast and there's some aspect we talk about and you don't see it right on that day on that aspectarian, don't worry about it. Don't call the publisher up complaining, saying there's no aspect that day. Aspects don't function like that. The day on the aspectarian, when we show an aspect, is when it is exact. It's exact by degree, by minute, by second. But aspects go on over many days, sometimes over many weeks, sometimes over many months for the outer planets. It's a different dynamic there. This is how it works. And why are we talking about it at that particular time? Because something's going on at the same time that's making that aspect go live. It's going bright. Maybe it's a lunation, the moon's in some place, the sun's in some place. Some aspect that's going on that's affecting it suddenly, and it's making it go loud. And so that's why it's in the forecast. Astrology is not about pinpoint calculations. It's about ongoing influences that overlap each other in a cycle. So with that said, let's see what's happening in December of 2017. Now, the month of December has 4 white circle days. These are generally very beneficial. We actually have 3 in a row, 6, 7, and 8. When the wind is really at your back, that's what a white circle day means. The energies are just real positive, they're real harmonious. A black box day is mostly angles. And so it's a day of conflict. Actually, I apologize. There's actually 2 black box days, and they're in a row on the 2nd and on the 3rd. And these are days that are more stressful. Doesn't mean they're bad days. It doesn't mean it's not a good day to do things. But because it's angles, it's squares, or oppositions, it means that it's a day in which you get a lot of stuff done, but it will take a bunch of work. Okay? The white circle days, you kind of cruise a bit more. You know, in terms of people oftentimes, well, when's the best time to do something? Well, first of all, it has to do with when you have to do it. But if you're actually choosing the time, there's a lot more to it than just what you're going to find in the calendar. The calendar is good for certain things, but you really have to look at the entire chart, which is why we work with the lunations as well. There's a lot of other influences there. It's quite the story. Now, to go to the forecast, what did we say? We described December as an exciting month. Exciting, that's cool. And it includes fascinating aspects and a very positive theme. Isn't that nice for December? Now, A, which is on the 1st, is when Venus goes from Scorpio, not an easy sign for Venus, honestly, because it's in the sign, Scorpio is the sign opposite Taurus. Taurus is one of the ruling signs of Venus, so when a sign is opposite that, it means it's especially weak. But it leaves Scorpio and goes into Sagittarius on the 1st. So Sagittarius has a lot more fun with Venus, or Venus has a lot more fun with Sagittarius than in Scorpio. Though at least Venus and Scorpio does make for very good sex. On the 2nd, Mercury turns retrograde. Back! Which is really throwing a wrench into the communication gears. Okay? And let me take a quick look at that, because on the 3rd is the full moon. And Mercury is where on the 3rd? Oh, it's at 29 degrees Sag. So it's stationing, so it's actually going retrograde in the last degree of Sagittarius. And it almost made it out of Sagittarius. It was right there by the door, and it changed its mind. It started backpedaling. Mercury Sagittarius is a time, so you now have 3 weeks in which you get to go back over stuff you've been working on and check it out. Great time to clean the closets. Great time to go back in your files and see what people were you contacting that you overlooked them, and go back and talk with them again. Great for that. It much more internalizes stuff. It does cause more problems with communications. It actually causes problems with the communication satellites. In Sagittarius, it could really be an issue of communication satellites. But anything to do with communications and short distance travel, especially in Sagittarius, could be an issue. So in the weeks before this, so really the last weeks of November, if the cars need servicing and things like that, take care of them then. If your phones are getting glitchy, replace them before the Mercury retrograde. You don't want to replace communication systems during a Mercury retrograde if you can possibly avoid it. So, now on the 3rd, we mark it with a C, is the full moon. And this is a very optimistic, but very goofy and very charming full moon. It's also very sensual, okay? It just is. Sorry, it just is. It's there's a bunch of dynamics that are going on. It just makes it a little goofy. Sagittarius has the potential to be very goofy. Just so you know, I think it's the Mercury stationing conjunct Saturn. It just kind of crosses the circuits quite a bit, but it is very optimistic because you have Venus at 2 degrees Sag and you have the Sun at 11 degrees Sag. So they're kind of almost an aspect, not a close aspect. You have Jupiter conjunct Vesta, which really makes Jupiter brighter, you might say. Mars is still in Libra, not a strong position, which is modulating the Jupiter. And then you have the Moon, and of course, in Gemini. Well, Mercury's going station, and the Moon, because it's got its influence from Mercury being in Gemini, it's kind of going, well, I'm not quite sure what's going on. So like I said, goofy, optimistic but goofy, charming but also sensual. So beware, because any flirting you do at this time will be taken seriously. Okay, just beware. On the 7th, this is when you have the Sun trine the Moon after the full moon. This is a time of fruition. Okay, the projects will start coming to fruition, but then bam, oh, on the 9th, Mars enters his traditional feminine sign of Scorpio. Okay, so at this point, I believe, yes, it is so, that Mars is the only sign in a major rulership. So Mars really takes over. And because Jupiter is in Scorpio, Mars, who's been pulling Jupiter's strings, is really in a position to do that. So it's going to really change in terms of people being much more direct, people taking much greater action, or as I describe it here, actions talk louder than words, okay? So be prepared for that, and it will be like that all the way through the Mars transit, which goes into next year. On the 15th, Venus is going to conjunct Mercury, or vice versa, okay? So on the 15th, this is a great time. Any place close to this before and after has a great time to have like heart-to-heart talks with people. When Venus and Mercury are close together, it's just easy to talk about stuff that matters to you. That's an important thing to do. And I just have to look at that. And yeah, it's actually in Sagittarius. So any discussion you're going to have about that is going to be, very productive. Very, very productive. Even though Mercury's retrograde, Mercury retrograde helps people get in touch or be able to voice their inner feelings. You know, during Mercury retrograde, it's a great time to talk to yourself in front of the mirror. You know, to be able to dig kind of deep within yourself and talk to yourself in the mirror and be able to move those ideas out there and have a chance to really look at them. Kind of a good time for, I mean, actually something that's good to do during Mercury retrograde. Isn't that nice? So, now, on the 17th, okay, and this is the real bell ringer, and this is the new moon, okay, which takes place conjunct 3 other planets. You have Saturn conjunct 3 degrees away from the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon are conjunct at this new moon at the Galactic Center, 26 degrees Sagittarius, a powerful esoteric point. And then you have Venus at 21 degrees, and you have that retrograde Mercury at 15 degrees. So you have what's called a classic 5-planet stellium in Sagittarius, centered, focused on the Galactic Center. That's very, very powerful. There's some deep messages going on here for the global community. In terms of our, our purpose on the planet, our responsibility to the planet, our responsibility to our cultures, our responsibility to our fellow humans, is really playing out at this time with this new moon. There's like it's really kind of a reset switch. So be aware of it. This is all on the 17th at that new moon. This is really a time to like envision your goals and affirm your spiritual connections. It's very important at that time. Now, the next thing that comes up is on the 19th, and that's when Saturn changes sign. So now the only thing that's been in a rulership sign, is Mars. Mars has been a real player, but now Saturn changes sign, entering his feminine ruling sign of Capricorn. This is another big deal. This is as big a deal as a couple months ago or a month or so ago when Jupiter changed sign, because he's going to stay there now for another 2.5 years. He might retrograde out a little bit, but in his traditional rulership sign, this is where Saturn is most concerned with fiscal responsibility, structural improvement, and strengthening the foundations for the future. So it may be that in societies that have been putting off all this work on infrastructure, they'll finally say, hey, what are we doing here? We got to get down to work before our roads and our bridges fall apart. There's going to be a very strong movement to get this thing done. There's going to be a lot of months behind it. And remember, this goes on. Saturn stays in the sign 2.5 years. Jupiter stays in the sign for about a year, though that can be as small as 6 months, depending upon retrogrades. But Saturn typically is in the sign for 2.5 years. And so those people who are born with strong planets in Sagittarius, or in Capricorn, the people that have lost strong things in Sagittarius are finally going to get Saturn off his back. But people with strong planets in Capricorn are going to start feeling the weight of this. It's not a bad thing, but it is about taking responsibility. And Saturn is very compressive. And in Capricorn, it really is compressive. But in a positive way, because it gets things done. So, like I said, it's a very exciting month. Now, this feminine Saturn is the matriarch who's binding the family together to ensure its future prosperity by embodying justice, loyalty, and practicality. Okay, did that describe it pretty well? Now, this is all reinforced on the 21st, which is the winter solstice, when the sun goes into Capricorn as well, conjunct Saturn. The king is escorting him into the next sign, the sun. There's a lot of weight being carried here. There's a lot of energy being carried here. And this yearly Sun-Saturn conjunction is the great standstill. It's funny, during this period of time, they actually find that plants will slow down their growth. If this happens the winter or the summer, it doesn't matter. The plants actually slow down their growths. That crystals slow down their growths. Their rate of their growth, as do animals. Everything slows down when the sun is conjunct Saturn. The standstill. And this is happening at the winter solstice, which the solstice means the sun stands still. Like I said, there's a lot of significance going on here. It's really a reset. A reality reality check. Now, on the 22nd, Mercury, after all this heavy stuff, kind of like a jack-in-the-box, pops up and goes direct. It starts chasing after the sun, and hopefully, now that he's direct, we'll start untangling any like last-minute shopping glitches. We can only hope, right? I mean, to have all these heavy things going on right as we go up to Christmas, I think there's going to be a lot of practical gift buying, to tell you the truth. Hopefully, you know, I tell you, with that Mercury retrograde in the Sagittarius, if you are buying things through catalogs or online, do it way in advance, like before Mercury goes direct if you possibly can, like in October. Okay, October, November, do your shopping then if you're doing it online. Because if you try to do it last minute, it's going to get glitchy. You could solve some things in the last minute with this Mercury going direct, but there's been a, you know, those last couple of weeks are complicated. And then finally, okay, on the 24th, Venus enters Capricorn. And if you're hoping for a traditional Christmas, this one's for you. Because Venus conjunct Saturn on Christmas Day is strength, experience, and beauty all together. It sounds lovely. It sounds like Currier and Ives. So that's the forecast for the year. Happy New Year. And I hope you found this helpful and illuminating. I'm Ralph Amicis, one of the astrologers for Planetary, along with Lonnie Amicis. And look for our forecasts for 2018 and our other articles, our TV shows. We do multiple TV shows here at spaceandtime.com. And I wish you a wonderful year